Welcome to a special edition of Willow Talk. Adam Peacock alongside Brad Haddin. Hads, looking forward to this guest today.
I am. Hodgey and I have actually solved the problems and caused a lot of the problems in the world, actually, in our time in cricket.
Yeah,
We've spent that
after
much...
play.
No. We've spent that much time stirring Gatorade together.
Yeah.
We had to talk. We couldn't always talk about cricket, but we solved some problems, Hodge.
Brad Hodge, welcome to Willow Talk, mate. We've got you along here to talk about your Top Knocks book that is out. But first of all, is there anything that you'd like to address in relation to what Bradley has just brought up there?
Adam, howdy. Yeah, we were professional drinks waiters for a long period of time there, actually, and it is important to make sure you get the mixture right, whether it be red or orange, and make sure that the person out of the middle gets the precise drink that they got. And often, most times, we'd stuff it up and get yelled at. But we spent a lot of time together, not through choice, by selection, unfortunately. But we had a lot of fun together. We trained hard, we played hard, and we certainly enjoyed each other's company as well.
Well, Hodgey, over a long period of time, you've been across everything Australian cricket, centred around your first-class career, which is magnificent, nearly an average of 50 for your beloved state, and obviously the international games that you played and retired with a test average of 55, which I'm sure you carry around to the various functions that you do from time to time. But, mate, you've delved into it heavy here about a wider scope on Australian cricket. It's purely called Top Knocks. As mentioned, congrats. It's the hardcover. Here we go. And if you got one of those on a book, it means the publisher really likes you because they've invested heavily, because it's really expensive, these types of books. But, mate, congrats. Firstly, where did it emanate from, doing a book like this?
Look, I'm really proud of it, actually, and I'm glad you got a hard copy. It was a select few that got that, so that's a privilege. It started a long time ago, where Hads will tell you that when you have a career or whatever it is in cricket, most people want you to tell your own story, some form of autobiography, and for many years I'd sort of shunned at it and said, oh, look, I'm not interested. And the rationale behind it, the reason is that I only played 6 test matches, and it's probably 94 of where I actually wanted to get to. So there's a lot of sort of heartache and like there's some great stories in that, but there's a lot of challenges as well. And if I had have done that, then it would have upset a lot of people, would have been a hard thing for me to write personally, and it was a journey which I didn't want to go through. So after about 15 years of people asking me to do this, I said, hey, listen to this. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually write about someone else, write about someone else's joy. And that's sort of how it sort of sparked this Top Knocks moment. And then it sort of went, it extended a little bit to, well, let's try and work across the 3 formats. Let's really test people's, challenge their thoughts on what is great in Australian cricket. How does a one-day international performance stack up to a test match performance or a T20 performance? So that was sort of how it went. And think about the future. Like, future in 50 years will be dominated by T20 cricket. So where will test match cricket sort of stand in the future? So that's how it came about. I'd say it's a positive in the sense that I steered away from my personal ambition to write a crappy autobiography of my own performances, and let's do something cool and talk about other people's brilliant performances. So that's it. That's the backstory.
So just Hads, for the listeners out there to let them know, it's the 20 greatest Australian batting performances over the last 50 years. All formats, men's, women's, whatever. So cool idea. And we won't give away the order in which they're ranked. I'm presuming, Hodgey, it is an order that you've gone through, and you've gone 20 to 1.
Yeah. So it starts at 20, and then reveals the top knock at number 1 right at the back end. So we had the debate about that, but I thought it was pretty cool to start at 20, and then you get that sort of, what's going to be at the end here? So it's a huge, big conclusion.
And the good thing is about when you rank things as an opinion is that it kickstarts debate. And no doubt, Hads, you're going to read this and go, I can't believe my knock is down there. No, just kidding. We won't give away your number, but congratulations on making it. Both.
No, it's fine. Let's talk about it. It's brilliant. And let me talk about how people got in there. One thing was, it was extremely difficult to dissect all Australian performances over the last 50 years. And I'm sure I covered most of them. I would have forgot a few of them, but if you actually pick anyone's career, Hads, Michael Bevan, who, it doesn't matter who, you then got to go through that, Ricky Ponting, 30 odd test match centuries. Then you got to break down every century within that. Then you got to think of the one-day performances. And it was really time-consuming to nut it down to a couple for each person. And then away across 50 years, well, it was a challenge. And to Hads, he's in this book. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. It's not just performance. This is there's a lot of backstories to these performances in this book that make these performances great, which no one actually knows about. And I think that was the difference that I was able to bring to the table, in the fact that I'm not a journalist. I'm not an author. Well, I am now. However,
award-winning
beg to
soon.
differ right
Award-winning.
now. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm an artist now. So I think that my attachment to the players and the cricket fraternity allowed the people in this book to sort of open up a little bit more about things that they'd probably kept inside. So I think that's the difference, and that's what makes it special.
Yeah, because some of them aren't centuries, namely the bloke sitting next to me. So,
what number is he? 14.
Yeah, we give that one away, 14, which is pretty good.
There you go.
Your knock, Hads, is the 94 against England, first test, Brisbane, 2013. Now, I have read this. I have researched, and you actually say in there too, Hodgey, that you're actually, there's a little bit of you that says, oh, okay, I didn't get a century, and that's okay, because I would have been a blubbering mess because of the backstory behind what Hodgey was just touching on, these stories behind these great knocks.
Yeah, it was interesting when Hodgey spoke to me, and he said, I'm thinking about one of your innings here to put in the book. He said not so much the score, but the backstory on what happened when you went through with your daughter. And knowing Hodgey the way I do, you probably opened up a bit more than I normally would, because you've been very, very reserved on what we went through with Mia throughout my whole career. And this was a time where this was my first innings back in Australia after having the time away from the game with Mia. My family couldn't be at the test match, and this sounds stupid, and it's in Hodgey's book, thank fuck, because it was an emotional time. And you didn't want to score 100, or you do for your team, but I thought, I don't cry that much. I'm not that sort of emotional guy, but how was I going to react there? Then
Helmet would have stayed on if you got the century.
Oh, well, it would have had to come off, but I don't know how I would have coped. But, it was. It's come up great, Hodgey. You must be proud.
Really proud. And, the point is that knock under extreme duress of, things outside of Hads's control, went towards an Australian Test match win, and then an Australian Test match, series summer. So there's a lot of things. There's a fair bit of criteria that went into it. Some innings like that one are a lot more emotional than others. Others are just pure talent and sheer skill. But there are a number of backstories that, as I mentioned, have an attachment that just elevate these performances to a higher level. And again, it's opinion, right? It's a judgment. So who's to say that 142 is better than 90? Like, that's the point.
Well, what about Hodgey when you were doing it? When you're going through everyone, could you easily just go, oh, well, hang on, out of these top 20 knocks, Punter's got 5 of the best ever, Bradman's got 6, Haydos has got a couple of there. You could nearly use 5 players.
It was pretty hard, yeah. And I sort of had to boot a couple, to be honest, that could easily have got in there. Gilchrist is in that book and probably could have easily got in 2 or 3 times. And people ask me, they go, oh, what about Gilly? What about that knock he made down in Hobart when, they beat Pakistan? And the point is, I go, well, yeah, that's great, but Justin Langer got 150 at the other end. So, how do you dissect and how it works? And most times throughout the book, there's not many performances that are on home territory. They're actually, most of them are away. And I don't know whether it just panned out that way, that maybe it's a bit more challenging away from home, or
Well, it is.
whatever it is, that, the performances, the conditions are tougher. So that sort of panned out that way. But it was really hard. It was great to be able to interview every person individually. It took a ton of time. Some were more giving than others. There was one person that made 150 at Lords that I probably was going to have in the book that had to get booted out of the book. It was like a 50-50 call. There was an innings by Phil Hughes that I really wrestled with that I wanted to get in there. And then you sort of go through the innings and you watch it and then you think, well, was it that good? Was it a flat wicket? There was a number of things that sort of came into it. But again, it's just personal opinion, right? And it sparks a great debate. The debate is the T20 knocks that are mentioned in there. How do they stack up? Because the two that are in there are the two highest individual scores in the world and may stand forever. So how does that relate? Is that Bradman-esque? Hads, you've played all three forms. How do you dissect a test match knock versus a T20 knock or a one-day knock that wins a world title? It's very hard to break down.
Well, if I look at that, yes, you would have. How hard would it have been to pick everyone? But you take a one-day knock, for example, and there's so many great one-day knocks. Then you go, hang on a minute, Glenn Maxwell's was just out of this world. You talk about some ones we've seen, punter in the final of the World Cup, but to score 200 the way he did, mate, that must have been a good one to write about.
Well, he's in the top three, and I had to really wrestle in my mind where that actually sits. And to be fair to Glenn, I had to boot someone out. I'd completed the book actually.
Oh, really?
And he'd performed that innings, and I'd sort of was waiting on one person that I needed to interview to complete the book. I won't name who it was, but it sort of took 9 months for me to get for this person to commit to chat to.
Don Bradman.
No, it wasn't the Don.
Probably would have been easier to get.
Played probably a bit like the Don. So then Glenn's innings happened, and I thought, well, I've got to get that innings in there. This is one of the best innings that's ever happened. And then by the time I actually got to speak with Glenn, we met in a local town here in Black Rock in Melbourne, and then chatted through it and all that. Then Hetty goes and makes this 160 in the Test World Championship, and then makes one of the best 140s in a World Cup final. And it was just like a never-ending process. And I thought, I've just got to get this book out there. I've got to finish it. So, look, what's in there is in there, and I don't know. I couldn't dissect. I do believe that one-day games, in my mind, are fractionally easier than Test match cricket, and that's probably the one thing which I think will lead towards Test match knocks being slightly ahead of one-day performances. But I'm still wrestling with T20 because depending on where you bat in T20 cricket, it's awfully tough, like really hard. Opening's fine. It's easy. You just go out there and try and whack it. But wherever you bat in T20 cricket, it's really is scoreboard determined. It's really hard the pressure you find yourself under. So, yeah, that's something I'll wrestle with in the future about what is great in T20 cricket.
Well, I can say that up to those two that you mentioned there, Glenn Maxwell and also Travis Head at the World Cup, you've done wonderful things for the Victorian South Australian cross-border relationship by putting Maxi in. And Trav, I'm searching the book for, but Maxi gets in.
He's not there. Look, when I went to the West Indies with the World Cup T20 side, I actually did say to him, Trav, you're going to be upset. Not through effort. You certainly would make it if you had made those knocks about 3 months earlier. But unfortunately, time was against you, and I had to get this thing published and get it out. So maybe we'll come up with maybe an edition purely related to South Australians in the next one. Who knows?
We could flip it. You can go in, like, say, 10 years' time. You can go, well, okay, here's the 50 best knocks. You've done the groundwork. You've done all the hard work with the research. 50 best knocks in the last 20 years. Just do the second edition, if you like.
This is almost like you've done it once. Do you really want to go and put yourself through the effort of doing it again? I'm not sure.
Mate, a couple of questions there, Hodgey. One, we know how fast bowlers and batsmen do not like each other. Could we see a second edition with the best spells you've seen? And the flip side, what's the one you like the best in the book?
The one that I love the best is actually, I think for me, there's two, I reckon, and they're probably the emotional attachment because I was there. One was the Ricky Ponting 150 at Old Trafford, only because I ran drinks out to him pretty much the whole 6 hours of that day. Australia were gone. It's only the one result which actually held on for a draw, but the build-up of that, the level of performance that England brought to the table was just the highest level. And to get Australia into a position where they nearly snatched that game and won that game, and there was so much tension and so much, it just looked like one of the hardest knocks that I'd visually seen. So for me, I was there in the moment. It was just an unbelievably tough Australian knock.
Well, you know what, Hodgey? I actually thought that might have been the first one you put out because if I remember that test match, Clark went down the morning of the day, first day, with a bad back, and you got heckled the whole time in the outfield. Remember, your shirt was a bit too tight around your chest?
I remember it clearly. It was probably the most horrible 2 hours of my life. So, yeah, the pups that went off with his traditional sore back, and I ended up at fine leg. I don't even know how I ended up at fine leg, but I was in front of the most horrendous crowd you've ever met. And at the time, me and Hads were pretty hard on a gym program, and I'd been pumping some serious tin. And I don't know whether it was the amount of chicken that I was eating as well. So my belief is that the chicken over in England is that much juiced up with hormonal growth that my pecs went through the roof. Right, and they're still pretty large, but they're at its highest point. Anyway, there's this dude in this England shirt. He's giving me a pile of shit, saying, he came up. Anyway, about an hour, he just disappears, this guy. And about an hour later, he comes back with this life-size blown-up kangaroo with a female bra on the kangaroo with some melons chucked in this bra. Yelling out, Hodgey, this is you. Anyway, I'm like devastated. I'm like, where's Pup? I need to get off this field as quickly as possible. It was a horrible experience. And to be fair to this guy, look, I don't know where he went or how he got a hold of this product. He must have dived off into Manchester somewhere, went to the local supermarket. I don't know where he got a life-size kangaroo or a female bra or a couple of melons to stick in there. But that was it. I was devastated. I reckon I didn't speak for, I don't reckon, 3 or 4 days after that.
There's zero chance that happens in Australia with the secos that just stop you bringing in everything into a ground. But over there, anything goes. You can bring in your own alcohol.
Oh, this was brutal. Brutal.
Hey, one knock that's in there as well. You mentioned Michael Clark. Famous Test victory. It featured a recent guest we had on Willow Talk, Ryan Harris, bowling, as I said to him that time, 147 over spell, punching into the wind in Cape Town to get a result for Australia. That was peak Michael Clark, wasn't it? Because not only in that game did he score those runs, but later in it, he made the wise or otherwise decision to sledge Dale Steyn and getting into a verbal with him.
Well, I think if you look at Michael Clark's career when it started in Bangalore, his biggest draw card was how well he played spin. Hodgey was on that too. He got 100 on debut, but this won 6-1. Morkel went after him, broke his shoulder. Mate, he stood in front of him eye to eye. It was uncomfortable out there. And that knock probably, mate, that was probably the defining knock in his career, I reckon, Hodgey.
It was brutal, wasn't it? And again, it was one of those knocks where you look back and go, that's some of the hardest period of Test match cricket that Michael actually ever would have faced, and he was pretty open about that. He said that the 300 he made at the SCG was probably an innings that he felt better at and was probably more comfortable, but for all the right reasons, this innings just stood out to him as well. And Hads, I don't know if you're the same, but most of these players, when we talked about their innings, those that had made multiple centuries, they sort of had 3 in their mind, which was like the high performance. And most of them couldn't remember or had little knowledge of the rest of the 25 that they'd made. It's like these 3 just were stuck in their mind. And you'd sort of work around and dissect, well, why'd you like that one better or what happened on this? And so I sort of work with them as well on, what was special, what made it special, or how did you feel about that? So it was great to get that insight. And a couple of players actually guided me to the choice. I was sort of tossing up one or two, and then they pushed me. Nah, this one's the one I reckon.
What was on your short list? I mean, he's landed on the 94 against England to start a 5-0 Ashes win after everything you've been through with your daughter being sick and coming back into the Australian setup. Were there others on your radar that you thought, personally, you hold, okay, didn't make the book, but personally you hold right up there?
I thought about my first 100 against England at Cardiff, but this one was the top of the list for me because, one, we'd just lost the series in England, and we didn't lose because we didn't play well. We lost because we weren't smart enough and didn't recognise big moments when they were presented. And this test match was all about getting Graham Swan out of the attack. We seen him as their most attacking weapon, and they had us in a bit of trouble. And I remember Mitch came out and said, we've got to get through Swan. I said, no. We've got a decision to make here, Mitch. Our game plan is to hit him out of the attack. We know how Cook will captain, and we'll get the momentum back. So, yes, it was a knock that you're happy with, but you're more happy with it in the way you went about it to play the team goal. And that's what I explained to Hodgey.
Quick drinks break on Willow Talk with Brad Hodge, our special guest, talking about Top Knocks, his book that is out now. We'll be back in a moment to talk more about that and cricket in general. Hodgey, our other co-host here on Willow Talk, or Keeping It Real as these two call it when I'm not around, and they make it a wicket-keeper show, Elisa Healy, she makes the book. And looking again, it's a great book because it not only just tells the story, it puts it in pure context because so much about cricket is about pure numbers. So you give the wagon wheel, you give the scorecard from the innings that the knock was made. Hills is one. Decent stage to do it in. Decent time to just crack 170 against England and all parts of Christchurch over there. That was some knock.
Well, I mean, that was it. So there was, when I had a look at the female game, I probably didn't know enough about the deeper history. Like, that's the honest truth. Like, I couldn't judge a Belinda Clark innings or Blackwell or whoever it was because I hadn't seen visually enough of their cricket played. I knew of their top innings, but I'd have to then go out and ask people. So it was more their opinion than mine. So I went sort of more current and then went Perry, Lanning, and then what did they do? And then this was sort of like a standout. There was Perry's 200 at North Sydney. You go, well, England weren't even that good, or it's a flat wicket, so not really. And then Lanning, I think, got 150 to sort of win an Ashes over in England, and you break that down. But again, for me, it came back to what was special, and those players. I think that stacks up against the Ponting and the Gilchrist in those match-winning World Cup knocks. So that's just elevates it to a different level. So that's sort of what I had to do. That's why it's there.
She'll be happy with that. Hads has got a scoring,
and she gets a free book too.
Yeah. You're in the book. You get a free one.
Yeah, he sent it out. I've read them all.
Excellent. Nice. And producer Sam's got one too. So, yeah, here it is right now. Might disappear from producer Sam's desk. I'm not sure. Hodgey, just through the author's process as well, did it surprise you that as journalists, it's not as simple as just coming up with an idea and knocking out a few words? There's a bit that goes into it.
It was hard. I reckon I churned out 16 chapters and tossed in the towel. I'd had enough. So
you were so close.
It was just becoming. Yeah, I know, and I'm just not sure whether that's my lifestyle, not finishing things off or not. But it was just, it just got too consuming. There's a ton of work that went into it. You're right. It's just not a simple process where I thought it would be, and then, listening back to everyone's audio as well, and then putting them into words, then putting my own words in, and punching away, tapping away on the computer. It was pretty daunting, and it's not. I'd say it's not my true passion either, right? So it was sort of like a little side project that sounded great at the time, and then the more you sunk your teeth in it, you thought, shit, there's a ton of work in this. So I got some effort to put into.
Mate, it's like painting a house, I guess. You look at it, you go, yeah, the house needs painting, and then you're doing it, and then you get to 3/4 of the way through and you go, why don't I just employ someone else to do this? This is ridiculous. But you get to the end of it and it's immensely satisfying. You say, I've done that. This is great.
It was pretty cool when I saw that hard copy show up at the house. I think that became the reality. And until then, it didn't really hit the mark, I suppose, or make sense to me until I saw that. And then I thought, hey, that's actually pretty cool. That's pretty good, actually. I like that.
Right, let's get in a bit about your career and your take on a few things as well, Hodgey, while we've got you here. Firstly, I'd love to know...
We're back on, are we?
Yeah. I'd love to know if you and Hads had any kind of head-to-head battles, hard ones out in the middle. New South Wales v Vic.
Nah.
No.
No, actually...
Nothing.
No, truth be told, the Blues and Victoria are actually pretty good. We used to have a few fights with Queensland and South Australia.
Everyone fights with Queensland.
More to the point. But I don't know what it was. I think there was. I had some good friends in the Blues camp. Like I was good friends with Shane Lee when I first started. We played under 19s together, and maybe that was a segue into, I don't know. Maybe he vouched for me and said I was a good bloke. Who knows what Shane said?
Yeah, I think the other thing there, Hodgey, when you had Berry, Warren, War and War going at each other and two young blokes just sitting there going, "Man, what have we walked into here?" and when they're going at each other, you needed someone to chat to. So we just sort of hit it off. And as he said, Shane Lee was a good judge of character too.
Mm.
The only thing I could really be shitty with is that Hads screamed that I had to face one ball to survive against New South Wales at the MCG. It was going to be the end of the play. We're going to call it off an hour early. Anyway, Matt Nicholson run in. He bowls this hooping in swinger. It was reverse swinging at the time. Anyway, I just thrust the pad out, thinking, that's outside the line or not out. And he appeals. Nico appeals. Anyway, I didn't even know the umpire gave me out. Got into the dressing room and went absolutely bananas when I got in there. I looked up on the scoreboard and it said Hodge out LBW. I was spewing, mate. I couldn't get my head around it. But anyway, I can't have any gripes against Hads. We've spent a lot of good time together for sure.
I've got one. Someone's told me about a great story between New South Wales and Victoria, and I don't know if either of you were there, but the timeline kind of lines up. It was at the end of Steve Orr's career. And he's come out to bat, and it might have been the last ever time that he was batting for New South Wales. He's got out there against Victoria, and he's flipped around to the slips cordon before he's faced the ball, and he's gone, "What did you say?" And apparently, it was Matty Elliott maybe there, or a few others. Gone, nothing. Steve Orr said, "Say that again," and like he wanted to take. He just created a scene, created a little bit of confrontation to get himself. That was the story from the Victorian side of things. Hodgie, did you know about that story? Were you out there that day? I want to verify it somehow.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I wasn't in slips because I couldn't catch him in the slips, so I would have been at mid-off. I think there was a special day. The moment was David Hooks was the coach, and I think this is the game. And we were so outmanned against this full-strength New South Wales lineup. So Hooksy basically came up with this theory that, look, let's really try and piss these New South Welshmen off. And two of the ones that we tried or wanted to piss off was Steve and Mark Waugh. So we went out and employed these sort of,
8-1.
9-1 fields or whatever. They can't have 9-1. Whatever the fields were, they were just brutally stacked on the offside with one person on the onside. We were bowling like easily 2 feet outside the off stump. Anyway, Junior's like blowing up at me because I was captain. I'm not even sure why I was captain. A few people must have been away, but I was. So I had to install this plan that Hooksy came up with, and as soon as Mark Waugh came out to bat, he just abused the life out of me. He said, this is a shit way to play cricket, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, after about 15 balls, he got the shits and got out. Then Steve walked to the crease, and he was abusing everyone before he even got out there. And Johnny Moss, who was medium pacer, bowling it outside off stump to his, everyone on the offside. Tugga actually has a massive dash at the first ball, goes straight to first slip, and it gets put down. So, anyway, he had the shits right after that. and we walked off the field with Steve Waugh at 200 not out, I reckon, come the end of the play. So it was pretty horrible. I remember Tugga abused the life of me. He just basically walked up to me and said, "This is a shit way to play. You got no idea how to captain. You've got your effing brain must be sawdust in there, Hodge." And I just went, "Yes, Tugga, probably. Yes, Tugga."
Oh, the good news is,
And look, that's it.
he's in the book. He'll let bygones be bygones, Hodgey, which is fantastic. Also, the test team you walked into. So your test career has obviously been well talked about. We won't dive down that rabbit hole. But the debut for your good self to get the baggy green, it was Bill Laurie who gave you the baggy green as well?
Yeah, it was.
So how good's
It
that?
was, yeah.
But you've walked in, so you
Yeah,
got
it's pretty cool.
You got the baggy green from Bill Laurie, and then you walk out into the test arena with Hayden, Hussey, Ponting, Clark, yourself, Simons, Gilchrist, Warren, Lee, McGill, McGrath. Like, seriously, what a team!
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, that's when I look back and dissect that. There's 6. I played 6 test matches, and they were all in amongst that company. So there's a lot of effort to try and get in there. There was 10,000 runs to break into that side, and as that's clearly pointed out, didn't last as long as I would have liked to. Stewie McGill's in there. That was against the West Indies, was the debut, and I'm not sure which part of the game I was more scared about, actually. Fielding either batting for my first time or fielding it short leg to Chris Gale and Brian Lara whilst McGill was bowling. That was pretty scary, actually, I must admit. Particularly when Chris Gale just sort of said to me, "Make sure you keep low, mate, because I'm going to whack it straight past your head."
Awesome.
Like, fair enough. Okay, that makes me feel comfortable. So hopefully Stewie bowls a couple long hops and I'm out of short leg pretty soon. So, no, not fun. It was really cool. As I mentioned, when you dissect your life and your cricket journey and you were part of playing in that unit, it's pretty special.
And Hodge, your third test, you obviously get the double 100 in Perth. But what about walking on to the MCG when you walked out to bat for your first test match there?
Well, it's where it sort of went pear-shaped, I reckon, for about 15 minutes, Hads. And it's probably, I don't have a lot of regrets in my life or anything, but I wish I had have done that a little bit differently.
Really?
Yeah, I just did everything that wasn't myself. The whole build-up was just intense. I was like a flighty racehorse that just didn't settle into the race quick enough. As an individual, walking out into the MCG, and this is what I explain to people, that, there's 80,000 people there, and if you break a footy game in half, there's 40,000 cheering for one, 40 for the other. And in this moment, there was 80,000 people cheering for one single human. It was pretty overwhelming, and I just didn't settle at all well. I didn't play the game the way I wanted to play. And truth be told, like I said, the only regret is that selectors or coaching staff or whoever it is didn't recognise that, and then I didn't get another opportunity to rectify it for the Victorian public the next year or down the track, because I would have loved to put on a good show for them, but unfortunately it was a bit of a shit show, to be honest.
It's weird though, isn't it? Because you mentioned, your stats don't lie. You've 17,000 first-class runs. So by that stage of your career, you're well over 10,000 first-class runs. You know your game. Backwards, inside outs. You've corrected faults and everything like that. But then an emotional element kind of gets in your head and it becomes that. And it points towards some of your big knocks here, that how the very best knocks of all time, they've been able to put everything aside. Not just a worry about technique, but it's from something that's happening at home or worry about form or anything like that. It's put aside. Can't be easy to do because it doesn't happen that often.
No, and a lot of the players in there have probably had a lot more experience at the top level than I did as well. So, as I said, people want to know. The hardest thing about that, when I look back, is just the neglect from the leadership, the coaching staff and stuff, to understand how that felt or how how I reacted in that moment. And it was just, no, I can't remember having one discussion about it, to be honest, or about any discussions about my performance. And that's probably the biggest letdown. Because if you were vulnerable and honest and you said to that group that, hey, that was just purely overwhelming, but it's happened now, it's done, it's dusted, and let's go and play the next one and let's get on with it. So it just unfortunately never happened again.
Do you reckon it's changed in the modern day greatly? Especially, I look at this Australian test side, and it feels like they're a lot more comfortable with blokes coming in with different aspects of where they're at in life and dealing with it. And, you look at a player like Mitch Marsh, who's copped it for, the first half of his career in particular, purely because of his last name. And now he's in an environment where it's like, oh, mate, you just be you. And if you want to go out at Headingley and just hit the living cover off the ball, regardless of the situation you're in, go and try it.
Yeah, look, the environment's fantastic, that's for sure. From what I've seen, doing a little bit of coaching in and out there, Had's been there. It's once you get to the top, the environment is pretty critical on to how you succeed. I also think there's a different mentality around the modern day player as well. So for me, I don't know what it was like for Hads, but for me, the whole life was playing Test cricket, representing Test match cricket in the baggy green. Now you can have three choices. So I don't think there's that real desperate nature around that moment. I'm only speaking out there that, like if I didn't play 50 test matches and there was more of a pathway, because players come in and out, right? They get chop and change, they're in and out. Would you be happy playing 50 T20 games for Australia? I'm not sure. But there may have been that solace that instead of being completely out of the Australian lineup, people are rested, you get more of an opportunity in the other formats. So there just seems to be a lot more volume of cricket, and you can be sort of more satisfied in representing Australia in different formats than just the test level.
I think another thing, Hodgey, back when we started as well, there's an vulnerability piece walking into that change room. You're walking into that change room with arguably now greats of the game. You got Ponty, Hayden, Warne, McGrath. The list goes on, and you didn't want to show any vulnerability. You wanted to show that you belong there, and sometimes you weren't probably as honest with yourself as you should have been with your teammates. And it could be an intimidating place to walk into, Hodge.
It was. There's multiple things I've digested around that team, and particularly one which stands out was the World Cup in the West Indies in 2007, where Sean Tate, claimed to have some form of depression in that space, and I've chatted to Tatey around this, and I've sort of dissected it myself. It was actually quite a lonely place. I think you were one of three Hads as well that didn't have family on that trip. So we were sort of sticking close together from each other, and you felt quite separated from the group. And 10 weeks is a long time to feel completely separated. And it's changed dramatically since then, but that's how it feels. And that's, as you mentioned, you can't show any form of emotion. And I don't think that many people actually looked to see how those on the outskirts actually were going. So there was one person that said to us straight to our eyes, Hads, you're either in the team or you're out. You can deal with that however you want to. It's pretty brutal.
Well, you dealt with it by going back to the
Caribs,
the bar at the
Caribs
beach as well, and everything like that. Hey, yeah, it's all part of it. It's all part of a cricketing career at the top level, from what I've learned, observing, obviously not experiencing. But as a coach, Hodgey, you're dipping your toe in this realm as well. So have you got in your mind, I've learnt what not to do, so I'm going to do that, or is it a bit different in reality?
It's different now. I mean, you go and you get around the modern player, and they do operate differently. They do have access to different things, and their life actually rolls completely differently than what we did. So yeah, it's everyone changes. So the test crew changed to a one-day crew to a T20 crew. So there's sort of multiple changes across the unit. That probably didn't happen back then. So yeah, it's coaching now it's evolved like the players, and you have to sort of adapt to that. And no, I think it's more about what the players need to succeed and give their best opportunity, not about anything else. So it's how you work with the player and the group and what makes their best opportunity for success. So that's sort of how it rolls these days.
Having a look back at my own career, Hodgey, I can sit here comfortably and say, you know what, I got the best out of what I had. I couldn't have done any more. Are there decisions you could have made better? Maybe. But I can honestly sit back and say I did everything I could. Are you happy with everything you got out of your career?
Yeah, I think exactly like you had. I couldn't have put any more effort and time into it. And, what's been punched out is the numbers that are there. I think T20 franchise cricket for me at the end was really important to feel satisfied that I hadn't achieved what I wanted to for Australia. I think that was a really important sort of back end piece. But I look back and I'm glad that there was a few innings of significance in there. I think that's important. I'd be devastated if I had 6 test matches and average 15, put it that way. So I think that, you can walk away and go, well, things actually didn't turn out the way you wanted to for certain reasons, but what you presented to everyone else was, in my mind, what everyone was expecting. So, yeah, for that, I'm pretty comfortable.
Last one, Hodgey, before we wrap up this episode of Willow Talk, special chat with your good self, cricketer, author, coach, learned human. Last one is, we asked this a fair bit on Willow Talk, who was the hardest bowler you had to face in the nets?
In the nets?
Yeah.
You can't tear each one apart. It was Mick Lewis and Shane Harwood.
Really?
They were horrible. Yeah, they were horrible in the Victorian nets. They used to try and kill you, and Hads will know this. Most times they're never behind the white line either. That was tough. Mitchell Johnson at the Wacker nets at the Gloucester Road end was like frighteningly scary. You just were praying that it was pitched up on the fuller side of the little ridge. If not, you're just ducking for cover. And that was probably the most testing 8 minutes of your life. That's probably the scariest, I reckon, from memory.
Yeah, we've got some staples with this answer, and usually it's Johnson. Boland has got a good go. Scotty Boland has got a good go, and Mitch Stark. But it's the first one. Lewis and Harwood have got a roll, so good to have a bit of variety there, Hodgey. Sorry, Hats.
Yeah, Hodgey actually played the senior card on me in the 2005-6 Ashes. We had Sean Tate on there trying to get picked, and someone always had to go in and face Tatey mid-game when the game was going on, and Hodgey go, mate, I'm the best fielder. I've got to sit here and watch, and Tatey was frightening. I remember, I think we were playing Derbyshire in the nets, and he's bowled a full toss, and they had the steel post, so it's missed the wicket. So I've just sort of dropped my hands and not worried. It came off the steel post and hit me in the rib. So he was a nightmare. But Hodge go, no, someone's got to be here to field, Hads. I'm much better than you, and I'm definitely much better than Sarfraz, so you've got to go.
Smart man, Brad.
Well, the good news was he got picked in the third test, didn't he? So that was a positive, I suppose.
Hodgey, thanks so much for the chat, mate. Brad Hodge's Top Knocks is out now. It's interviews with the top 20, all of them in there, the backstory, everything. It's a great read and a perfect gift for Christmas as well. So this is going to be in a fair few stockings. Brad Hodge, thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Hads.
Hads, thank you. Catch you soon on Willow Talk.
Mate, proud of him. Outstanding, Hodge.
Have a good one, everyone. Yeah, thanks for watching the Willow Talk podcast on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't have to miss an episode wherever you are. And while you're at it, check out these videos up here. They're mostly good.